As June and Soo-yeon stepped out of the cafe, the night air wrapped around them with a gentle coolness, carrying the faint fragrance of blooming jasmine that lingered in the quiet street. The city seemed hushed, as if it too understood the fragile reunion unfolding within its heart. They walked side by side without speaking, their footsteps falling in rhythm, yet the silence between them carried more weight than words could bear. For years they had lived in parallel worlds, always close in memory but far in reality, and now, with each hesitant step, it felt as though those lost years were slowly stitching themselves together. June glanced at Soo-yeon from time to time, noticing the way the lamplight touched her hair, the way her eyes shone with unshed tears, and the way she held herself as if afraid the moment might dissolve if she breathed too deeply. "Do you still go to the Cherry Blossom Hill?" she finally asked, her voice trembling, almost breaking under the weight of her own longing. June swallowed hard, his throat tight, before nodding slowly. "Every spring," he answered softly, his words carrying the ache of countless nights he had stood beneath falling petals, hoping she might appear. "I thought if I kept going, maybe someday, you would find me there again." Soo-yeon bit her lip, trying to steady herself, and lowered her gaze to the pavement. For a moment, the world blurred before her eyes, as if the memories were too heavy to carry. They turned down a quieter street, away from the faint hum of traffic, and paused at the small park where they once spent afternoons talking about their dreams. The swings creaked gently in the breeze, empty yet filled with the echoes of laughter long past. Soo-yeon's eyes softened as she whispered, "It hasn't changed." June gave a faint smile, though sorrow flickered in his expression. "Everything changed when you left," he murmured, his words hanging in the air like a confession he had held too long. She looked up at him then, her eyes brimming, the weight of regret pressing against her chest. "I never wanted to leave," she whispered back, her voice breaking, "but I had no choice. My family, they wanted me to live a life that didn't belong to me." The vulnerability in her words struck June like a blade and a bomb at once. He stepped closer, hesitant yet unable to stop himself, his hand hovering as though asking permission before brushing against hers. She flinched slightly at the contact, not out of rejection, but because the simple touch carried years of unspoken love and the overwhelming fear of losing it again. Slowly, she let her fingers curl into his, fragile but certain. The world seemed to pause, the streetlights glowing warmer, the night wrapping them in quiet shelter. "You don't have to explain," June said softly, his voice rough with emotion. "I just needed to know that I wasn't the only one holding on." Soo-yeon's breath caught, and a tear slipped down her cheek as she whispered, "I never let go, not for a single day." In that moment, their pain intertwined with their hope, the years of silence melting into a single truth neither could deny. They stood like that, hands entwined, hearts trembling, as if the universe itself had conspired to give them this fragile chance. Around them, the night deepened, the stars faintly visible above the city's glow, silent witnesses to a love that had endured through absence, silence, and sorrow. And as they began walking again, side by side, neither knew what the future held, but both understood that after years of shadows, they had finally stepped into the light together. The quiet streets stretched before them, painted in the soft glow of street lamps and the muted flicker of distant neon signs. June and Soo-yeon walked slowly, as though neither wished to reach the end of the path too soon. Their hands remained loosely entwined, not tightly as lovers might, but carefully, as if they both feared the fragile bond could break if held too firmly. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain from a distant storm, and with each passing moment, the silence between them grew heavier. Not the silence of strangers, but the silence of two souls who had so much to say, yet were afraid to break the delicate spell surrounding them. Soo-yeon glanced at June from the corner of her eye, her heart aching at how familiar yet different he seemed. Time had left its traces upon him, lines of quiet weariness at the corners of his eyes, a subtle heaviness in his posture. But he was still the boy who had once made her laugh under cherry blossoms, still the boy who had captured her smile in a frame that she carried like a secret talisman through the loneliest nights. "You've changed," she said softly, her voice almost carried away by the breeze. June gave a small, rueful smile. "And you haven't," he replied. "You're still the one I've been searching for, even when I told myself to stop." Her breath caught, and for a moment she looked away, afraid that the intensity in his eyes would shatter the fragile composure she held. They turned onto a narrower street, where shops had closed for the night, and the only sound was the faint rustle of leaves. A stray cat crossed their path, pausing to look at them before slipping into the shadows, and Su-Yun felt an odd pang of recognition. "Even the city feels different tonight," she murmured, as if confessing to herself. "Like it remembers us too." They stopped by an old bookstore, its windows dusty, its lights long gone, but it was the same place where they had once hidden from the rain years ago, laughing as they leafed through poetry collections they could not afford. The memory struck them both at once, and without speaking, they stood there, staring at the shop front as though trying to see through the years. "Do you remember?" Su-Yun whispered, her fingers tightening slightly against his. "The rain was so heavy that day." June chuckled quietly, though his laughter was tinged with sadness. "And you insisted on finding a book that would explain why raindrops fall slower when you watch them closely." She smiled faintly, tears glistening in her eyes. "You made me believe it was true." The weight of memory pressed against them, until June finally turned to face her fully. The lamplight cast a halo around her hair, and his chest tightened with the realization of how much he had missed, how much time had stolen. "Su-Yun," he said slowly, carefully, as if saying her name might break the fragile thread of fate holding them together. "I don't know what tomorrow looks like. I don't know if we'll be strong enough to fight the world this time. But right now, I can't let you slip away again." Her lips trembled as tears spilled freely down her cheeks, the years of restraint crumbling in a single heartbeat. She reached up, her hands brushing his face as though memorizing the shape of him all over again. "Then don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you again either." And in the quiet of the sleeping city, beneath the dim glow of a forgotten street lamp, they leaned into each other, not in a desperate embrace, but in a tender closeness that spoke of promises unspoken and wounds yet to heal. As they stood there, side by side, their shadows merging on the pavement, the world seemed to breathe with them, quietly, gently, as though blessing their fragile reunion.